Picture this. You wake up one morning to find your bank account frozen. Your credit cards don't work. Your digital wallet is empty. Every financial app on your phone shows the same message: service temporarily unavailable. But here's the twist. Your traditional bank is fine. It's not a system crash. It's not a cyber attack. It's one man's decision. For years, someone you've never heard of controlled more money than most countries. He moved billions with a single click. He decided which currencies lived or died. And when governments finally caught up to him, the entire crypto world trembled. This is Changpeng Zhao, CZ to his friends. The shadow CEO who built a financial empire so powerful, it made traditional banks look like corner stores. What happened next? No one saw coming. Most billionaires start their origin stories in garages or dorm rooms. Changpeng Zhao's story begins in a McDonald's kitchen in Canada. It's 1989. A 12-year-old Chinese boy is flipping burgers after school to help his immigrant family survive. His father was a professor back in China, but here, he's starting over. The family has nothing but hope and a willingness to work. CZ learned something crucial during those McDonald's shifts. Speed matters, efficiency matters, and sometimes the person who moves fastest wins everything. Fast forward to his 20s. CZ isn't flipping burgers anymore. He's writing code, building trading systems, working at Bloomberg, creating the software that moves millions of dollars in milliseconds. But here's what made him different from every other programmer in that office. He was obsessed with one question. What if money could move as fast as information? Think about it. In 2005, you could send an email across the world instantly. But sending money? That took days. Banks, intermediaries, fees, delays. The whole system felt broken to someone who understood how fast computers could actually work. Then 2008 happened. The financial crisis hit. Banks collapsed. People lost everything. And CZ watched it all unfold from his trading floor, seeing how fragile the entire system really was. Most people got scared. CZ got curious. He started asking dangerous questions. What if banks weren't necessary? What if currency could exist without governments? What if the entire financial system could be rebuilt from scratch? His friends thought he was crazy. His family worried he was throwing away a stable career. But CZ had seen something they hadn't. He'd worked inside the machine. He knew where it was vulnerable. In 2013, he made a decision that would change everything. He sold his apartment, liquidated his savings.
This part of the program is sponsored by The Tria, oasis of comfort with a touch of luxury. Visit thetria.com. Your dream home vibe is just a scroll away.
And went all in on something most people had never heard of: Bitcoin. But here's where CZ's story gets interesting. He didn't just buy Bitcoin and wait. He started building, creating tools, writing code, and slowly, quietly, he began constructing what would become the most powerful financial platform on Earth. His first real success was blockchain.info, a Bitcoin wallet service that millions of people used without ever knowing CZ's name. He was learning something important. In the digital world, you could have enormous influence while remaining completely invisible. Then came the moment that would define his entire future. CZ was working in Shanghai, watching the Chinese crypto market explode. Millions of people were trading digital currencies, but the platforms were slow, unreliable, expensive. It was like watching people try to race Formula One cars on dirt roads. That's when the vision hit him. What if there was an exchange that worked as fast as his Bloomberg trading systems? What if crypto trading could be as smooth as sending a text message? His colleagues told him it was impossible. The technology wasn't ready. The regulations were unclear. The competition was fierce. Every rational person would have walked away. But CZ had learned something from those McDonald shifts. Sometimes the best opportunities look impossible to everyone else. In 2017, he launched Binance with a simple promise: the fastest, cheapest crypto trading platform in the world. Most exchanges took weeks to process new accounts. Binance did it in minutes. Most platforms could handle thousands of trades per second, but Binance could handle millions. Within 6 months, Binance became the largest crypto exchange on the planet. But success brought a new problem. Governments started paying attention, and when you're moving billions of dollars across borders without traditional banking oversight, governments get very, very interested. CZ faced a choice: play by the rules and grow slowly, or stay in the shadows and risk everything. He chose the shadows. What happened next would make him one of the most powerful people on Earth, and eventually, one of the most wanted. The boy who once flipped burgers for minimum wage was about to discover that controlling the world's money comes with a price most people can't imagine paying. By 2018, CZ had built something unprecedented. Binance wasn't just an exchange anymore. It was becoming the central nervous system of global cryptocurrency. Here's what most people didn't understand. While traditional banks moved your money through a complex web of intermediaries, Binance was the intermediary. Every trade, every transaction, every digital dollar that moved through the crypto world, it all flowed through CZ's servers. Think about the power that represents. When you control the pipes, you control everything that flows through them. CZ started expanding in ways that made traditional finance executives nervous. Binance Smart Chain, Binance Coin, Binance Labs. Each new product wasn't just a business venture. It was another layer of control over the global crypto ecosystem. But here's where it gets really interesting. While other crypto companies were trying to work with regulators, CZ was building around them. Binance didn't have a headquarters. It didn't have a fixed location. It existed everywhere and nowhere at once. Employees worked from dozens of countries. Servers were scattered across continents. Legal entities were registered in jurisdictions most people couldn't find on a map. CZ had created something that had never existed before: a truly borderless financial institution. The strategy was brilliant and terrifying at the same time. When regulators in one country started asking questions, Binance would simply shift operations elsewhere. When governments demanded user data, CZ would claim it didn't exist in their jurisdiction. When authorities tried to shut down local operations, they'd discover there were no local operations to shut down. It was financial sovereignty in its purest form, and it was driving governments absolutely crazy. By 2020, Binance was processing more trading volume than the New York Stock Exchange. Let that sink in. A company that didn't officially exist anywhere was moving more money than America's most established financial institution. CZ's personal wealth exploded. Forbes estimated his net worth at over $90 billion, making him one of the richest people on the planet. But unlike other billionaires, he remained almost completely invisible. No flashy lifestyle, no public appearances, no social media presence beyond occasional tweets about crypto markets. He was the ghost in the machine, pulling strings that moved billions of dollars while remaining completely hidden from public view. But power like that doesn't stay secret forever.
This part of the program is sponsored by Via Nature, where nature meets innovation. Visit vianature.com. Your planet-friendly goodies are just a click away.
The first cracks appeared when regulators started connecting the dots. Money laundering investigations revealed that Binance was processing transactions from sanctioned countries. Terrorist organizations were using the platform to move funds. Drug cartels were converting dirty money through Binance's systems. CZ's response: "We're a technology company. "We provide tools. We can't control how people use them." It was technically true, but it was also incredibly naive. Governments don't care about technical distinctions when billions of dollars are flowing to their enemies. They care about results. And the results were clear. Binance had become the financial highway for every criminal organization on Earth. The Department of Justice started building a case, not just against Binance, the company, but against CZ personally. They had evidence of deliberate anti-money laundering violations, proof that Binance was actively helping users evade sanctions, documentation showing that CZ knew exactly what was happening and chose to ignore it. Here's what made CZ's situation unique. He wasn't just running a company that broke rules. He had built a system specifically designed to operate outside any government's control. That wasn't just a business model. It was a direct challenge to the entire concept of financial sovereignty. Every transaction that flowed through Binance was a transaction that governments couldn't monitor, couldn't tax, couldn't control. For someone like CZ, that was freedom. For law enforcement agencies around the world, it was an existential threat. The net started closing in 2023. One by one, countries began banning Binance operations. The UK, Japan, Germany. Even crypto-friendly jurisdictions like Singapore started distancing themselves from the platform. But CZ had built his empire to survive exactly this kind of pressure. When one door closed, 10 others opened. When one jurisdiction banned Binance, the platform would simply route operations through different servers, different legal entities, different countries. It was like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. The problem was that CZ himself wasn't smoke. He was a person, with a passport, with physical locations where he could be found and arrested. And governments were starting to realize that the only way to stop Binance was to stop CZ. The man who had built a financial empire by staying invisible was about to discover that you can't hide from the entire world forever, especially when you're controlling more money than most countries produce in a year. What happened next would prove that even the most sophisticated systems of control have one fatal weakness. They're still run by human beings. And human beings can be caught. The shadow CEO who controlled all your money was about to step into the light. And when he did, the entire crypto world would learn what happens when you challenge the global financial system and lose. While governments were building cases against him, CZ was playing a completely different game. He wasn't just running a crypto exchange. He was building something far more powerful. Absolute trust in an industry built on mistrust. Think about what CZ understood that his competitors didn't. In traditional finance, trust comes from regulation, government backing, insurance guarantees. But in crypto, trust comes from performance. And CZ made sure Binance performed flawlessly, even when everything else was falling apart. When other exchanges got hacked, Binance stayed secure. When competitors went offline during market crashes, Binance kept running. When rival platforms froze withdrawals during panic selling, Binance processed every transaction without delay. It was masterful psychological manipulation. Every time the crypto world faced a crisis, Binance emerged stronger. Users didn't just see reliability. They saw invincibility. But here's what made CZ's approach truly brilliant. He turned regulatory pressure into a marketing advantage. Every time a government banned Binance, CZ would frame it as persecution of financial freedom. Every investigation became proof that traditional finance was scared of innovation. Every regulatory complaint was evidence that Binance was disrupting the right people. His message was simple and seductive. They're not attacking Binance. They're attacking your right to control your own money. Millions of crypto enthusiasts ate it up. CZ wasn't just their exchange operator. He was their champion against an oppressive financial system. The community rallied around him with religious fervor. Social media exploded with #FreeBinance hashtags. Users organized boycotts of traditional banks. Crypto influencers painted CZ as a digital freedom fighter standing against government tyranny. It was cult-like devotion disguised as market loyalty. Meanwhile, CZ was quietly implementing changes that made Binance look more legitimate to regulators.
This part of the program is sponsored by Pause Wars. Gear up for happy tales. Sniff out pausewars.com, where your pet's wag comes with a splash of style.
He hired compliance officers from major banks, added Know Your Customer verification processes, started blocking transactions from sanctioned countries. But here's the thing about CZ's legitimacy campaign. It was all theater. Behind the scenes, Binance was still processing billions in questionable transactions. The compliance measures had loopholes big enough to drive trucks through. The sanctions screening was easily bypassed by anyone who knew the right techniques. CZ had created a two-tier system: clean operations for government observers, shadow operations for everyone else. It was financial compliance as performance art. The strategy worked perfectly for years. Regulators saw improvement and backed off slightly. Users saw continued freedom and stayed loyal. CZ got to have his cake and eat it too. But maintaining that illusion required constant energy. Every new investigation meant new theater. Every regulatory change demanded new workarounds. Every government complaint needed a fresh narrative about financial freedom. CZ was essentially running two companies simultaneously: the public Binance that followed rules and cooperated with authorities, and the real Binance that operated exactly as it always had, just more carefully. The psychological toll was enormous. CZ started making mistakes he never would have made earlier: public statements that contradicted internal documents, promises to regulators that his own systems couldn't keep, assurances to users that government pressure was making it impossible. He was trying to serve too many masters: crypto anarchists who wanted complete freedom, institutional investors who demanded regulatory compliance, government officials who required total transparency, individual users who expected perfect privacy. It was an impossible balancing act, and CZ was starting to realize that no one can maintain perfect balance forever. The first major crack appeared when internal Binance communications leaked to investigators. Messages showing CZ personally approving transactions from sanctioned entities. The leaked documents revealed something much more mundane: a businessman who bent rules for profit and rapid in ideology for marketing. The shadow CEO who had controlled global crypto markets through pure trust was about to learn what happens when that trust evaporates. And in an industry built on confidence, losing credibility isn't just a business problem. It's an extinction event. The first whisper started in places most people never look: deep in blockchain analytics forms, buried in regulatory filing footnotes. Even crypto influencers who had previously defended CZ began asking uncomfortable questions about Binance's operations. The most damaging whisper came from an unexpected source: Binance's own former employees. In regulatory filings that barely made news, ex-Binance compliance officers started telling a very different story about the company's operations. They described a culture where anti-money laundering rules were treated as suggestions, where sanctions screening was deliberately weakened, and where CZ personally overruled compliance decisions that would have blocked profitable transactions. These weren't disgruntled workers making wild accusations. These were compliance professionals with decades of experience at major banks. People who understood exactly what they were seeing and why it mattered. Their testimonies painted a picture of systematic rule-breaking that went far beyond regulatory gray areas. Binance wasn't just operating in unregulated spaces. It was actively circumventing rules it had publicly agreed to follow. The whispers grew louder when blockchain analytics firm Chainalysis published a bombshell report. Their data showed that Binance had processed over $10 billion in transactions from addresses linked to criminal activity, money from ransomware attacks, funds from drug trafficking operations, payments to terrorist organizations. Most damaging of all, the report showed these weren't isolated incidents. They were patterns, systematic flows of dirty money that suggested Binance wasn't just failing to catch criminal transactions. It was facilitating them. CZ's response was swift but telling. Instead of addressing the specific allegations, he attacked the methodology, called the research biased, suggested that traditional financial institutions processed far more criminal money than crypto exchanges. It was classic deflection, and it worked with his core supporters. But it did nothing to address the underlying problem. Governments were starting to build criminal cases based on exactly this kind of evidence. The whispers reached a crescendo when the Wall Street Journal published leaked internal Binance communications. Messages showing CZ joking about regulatory compliance. Emails where senior executives discussed strategies for evading sanctions. Documents proving that Binance's public statements about cooperation with law enforcement were completely contradicted by its private operations. The most damaging leak was a message where CZ responded to a compliance officer's concerns about processing sanctioned transactions. His reply was just 4 words: "We are a crypto company," as if being in crypto exempted Binance from following the same laws that governed every other financial institution on Earth. The market started reacting. Not dramatically, but subtly. Institutional investors began reducing their Binance exposure. Major crypto funds started diversifying across multiple exchanges. Even retail traders began keeping smaller balances on the platform. CZ was facing something he'd never encountered before: doubt from his own community. The shadow CEO who had built his empire on absolute trust was discovering that trust, once cracked, spreads like a virus. And in the interconnected world of global finance, doubt moves even faster than money. The Department of Justice investigation into Changpeng Zhao began with a single transaction. One wire transfer for $50,000 that should have been routine. Except it wasn't. The money came from a sanctioned Iranian entity, was processed through 3 different shell companies, and ended up in an account controlled by a known terrorist financier. All within 24 hours. All through Binance's systems. When investigators traced the transaction back, they found something that made their blood run cold. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was one of thousands. Agent Sarah Chen had spent 15 years investigating financial crimes. She'd taken down money laundering operations worth billions. She'd unraveled Ponzi schemes that spanned continents. But she'd never seen anything like what Binance had built. It wasn't just that they were breaking rules, Chen would later testify. They had systematically designed their entire operation to make rule-breaking invisible. The investigation started small. A joint task force between the DOJ, Treasury Department, and Commodity Futures Trading Commission. 12 agents, a modest budget. The assumption was they'd find some compliance violations, levy some fines, and move on. What they found instead was a financial empire built specifically to operate outside the law. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source: a Binance software engineer who'd grown uncomfortable with what he was being asked to build. Code that would automatically split large transactions into smaller amounts to avoid reporting requirements. Algorithms that would route suspicious transfers through multiple jurisdictions to obscure their origins. Systems designed to make money disappear and reappear without leaving digital fingerprints. The engineer, who remains anonymous, provided investigators with something they'd never had before: the actual code that powered Binance's shadow operations. It was like finding the blueprints to a bank heist while the robbery was still in progress. Agent Chen's team began reverse engineering Binance's systems. What they discovered was breathtaking in its sophistication. CZ hadn't just built a crypto exchange, he'd built the most advanced money laundering platform in human history. Every transaction that entered Binance went through multiple layers of obfuscation. Customer identities were deliberately obscured. Transaction histories were fragmented across dozens of databases. Withdrawal patterns were randomized to avoid detection by traditional monitoring systems. But here's what made the investigation truly explosive. CZ's personal involvement in every aspect of the operation. Internal emails showed him personally approving high-risk transactions. Messages revealed him instructing engineers to weaken compliance systems. Documents proved he was aware of specific criminal organizations using Binance and chose to keep serving them anyway. The most damaging evidence came from CZ's own laptop. When investigators finally obtained a search warrant, they found a folder labeled Regulatory Issues. Inside were detailed analyses of how to circumvent sanctions in dozens of countries, strategies for avoiding detection by law enforcement, even contingency plans for what to do if key personnel were arrested. CZ had been planning for this investigation long before it started, but here's where CZ made his fatal mistake. He assumed that because Binance operated across multiple jurisdictions, no single government could hold him accountable. He was wrong. The DOJ had been quietly building relationships with law enforcement agencies around the world. When they finally moved, it wasn't just an American investigation. It was a coordinated global operation involving authorities from 17 countries. On November 15, 2023, everything came together at once. CZ was arrested at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport while trying to board a flight to Dubai. Simultaneously, Binance offices were raided in London, Tokyo, and Singapore. Bank accounts were frozen in Switzerland and the Cayman Islands. Servers were seized in Ireland and the Netherlands. The man who had built a borderless financial empire discovered that borders still mattered when governments decided to work together. The evidence against CZ was overwhelming. Over 10,000 pages of internal documents, hundreds of hours of recorded conversations, blockchain analysis showing billions in criminal transactions, testimony from dozens of former employees. Most damaging of all, CZ's own words. In recorded phone calls with Binance executives, he explicitly acknowledged that the platform was being used for money laundering and chose to continue operations anyway. "We make too much money to worry about compliance," CZ said in one particularly incriminating recording. "Let the lawyers figure out how to make it legal later." The investigation revealed that Binance had processed over $898 billion in transactions that violated anti-money laundering laws. Money from drug cartels, payments to terrorist organizations, funds from ransomware attacks, proceeds from human trafficking operations. CZ hadn't just failed to stop criminal activity, he had built a business model that depended on it. When the charges were finally announced, they read like a catalog of financial crimes. Conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money-transmitting business, willful violation of the Bank Secrecy Act, conspiracy to violate the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, money laundering conspiracy. Each charge carried a potential sentence of 20 years in prison. But the investigation revealed something even more troubling than CZ's criminal activity. It showed how easily one person could build a financial system that operated completely outside government oversight. How quickly that system could grow to handle more money than most countries. How effectively it could hide criminal activity from even the most sophisticated law enforcement agencies. The shadow CEO who had controlled all your money wasn't just a criminal. He was proof that the entire global financial system was more vulnerable than anyone had imagined. When CZ finally appeared in federal court, He looked nothing like the confident entrepreneur who had built a crypto empire. Smaller cryptocurrencies simply evaporated as trading volume disappeared. But the real damage went deeper than market numbers. Retirement accounts that had been converted to crypto were suddenly worthless. Small businesses that had adopted Binance's payment systems couldn't process transactions. Entire countries that had embraced crypto as legal tender watched their economies destabilize in real time. El Salvador, which had made Bitcoin official currency, saw its government reserves lose 40% of their value overnight. The president who had championed crypto adoption was facing riots in the streets. In Nigeria, where millions used Binance to avoid currency controls, the platform's collapse triggered a financial crisis that affected the entire banking system. People who had trusted CZ more than their own government discovered what happens when that trust is misplaced. The psychological damage was even worse than the financial losses. CZ hadn't just stolen money. He'd stolen something more valuable: faith in the entire concept of decentralized finance. For years, crypto enthusiasts had argued that blockchain technology could replace traditional banking, that individuals could control their own financial destiny without government oversight. CZ's collapse proved the opposite. It showed that crypto was just as vulnerable to human corruption as any traditional financial system. Maybe more vulnerable, because there were fewer safeguards. The ripple effects spread far beyond crypto markets. Traditional financial institutions that had started offering crypto services immediately pulled back. Banks that had been exploring blockchain partnerships canceled their programs. Governments that had been considering crypto-friendly regulations imposed strict new restrictions instead. Venture capital firms that had invested billions in crypto startups watched their portfolios collapse. Not because the technology failed, but because trust in crypto leadership had evaporated completely. The most tragic casualties were the true believers, people who had genuinely thought crypto could democratize finance and create a more equitable world. They discovered that their revolution had been hijacked by someone who cared more about profit than principles. Michael Chen had been running a crypto education nonprofit in San Francisco. He'd spent 5 years teaching financial literacy to underserved communities, showing them how blockchain technology could help them escape predatory banking practices. After CZ's arrest, Michael's students started asking uncomfortable questions. If the biggest crypto exchange was just a money laundering operation, what did that say about the entire industry? If CZ could fool millions of smart people for years, how could anyone trust crypto again? Michael didn't have good answers, because the truth was that CZ's crimes had poisoned the well for everyone. The economic shockwave extended far beyond individual investors. Pension funds that had allocated portions of their portfolios to crypto lost billions. University endowments that had embraced digital assets as the future of investing watched their returns evaporate. Insurance companies that had started offering crypto-related policies faced massive claims they couldn't pay. Credit card companies that had enabled crypto purchases found themselves dealing with millions of disputed transactions. But perhaps the most devastating impact was on developing countries that had seen crypto as a path to financial inclusion. Nations with unstable currencies had embraced Binance as an alternative to traditional banking. When the platform collapsed, entire populations lost access to digital financial services. In countries like Venezuela and Turkey, where hyperinflation had made local currencies worthless, people had turned to Binance as their primary financial institution. They kept their savings in crypto, paid their bills through Binance's systems, and conducted business using the platform's tools. CZ's arrest didn't just freeze their accounts. It eliminated their entire financial infrastructure overnight. The human cost was staggering. Families who couldn't access their savings, businesses that couldn't pay employees, students who couldn't afford tuition, medical patients who couldn't pay for treatment. All because one man had decided that making money was more important than following laws designed to protect exactly these kinds of victims. The investigation revealed that CZ had personally profited from every criminal transaction that flowed through Binance: drug money, terrorist funding, ransomware payments. He'd taken a percentage of all of it. His personal wealth had grown by billions, while his platform facilitated crimes that destroyed countless lives. When investigators calculated the total damage, the numbers were almost incomprehensible. Direct financial losses exceeded $2 trillion when market impacts were included. But the indirect costs, the lost opportunities, the destroyed businesses, the shattered trust in financial innovation, those were incalculable. The shadow CEO who had promised to democratize finance had instead created the largest financial fraud in human history. And the people who paid the price weren't wealthy investors or sophisticated institutions. They were ordinary people who had believed in a better financial future and trusted the wrong person to deliver it. CZ sits in federal prison today, serving 4 months for crimes that destroyed trillions in wealth and shattered millions of lives. 4 months. The man who built the most sophisticated money laundering operation in history got less prison time than people who rob convenience stores. Because when you steal with code instead of guns, when you destroy lives with algorithms instead of violence, the justice system doesn't quite know what to do with you. But CZ's real punishment isn't prison time. It's watching his life's work become a cautionary tale about what happens when we trust technology more than we trust each other. The crypto revolution he helped create has survived his downfall, but it's forever changed. More regulated, more cautious, more aware that innovation without accountability isn't progress, it's just sophisticated theft. The shadow CEO who controlled all your money learned what every empire builder eventually discovers. You can hide from governments, evade regulations, and fool millions of people, but you can't escape the consequences of your choices forever. Sometimes the price of absolute power is absolute justice. And sometimes that justice comes when you least expect it. If you want to understand how one person's greed can reshape entire economies, watch this next video about the collapse of FTX. Subscribe for more stories about the hidden forces that control your financial future.